the main thing that I would be focused on with all the horses is progression, and to always start out easy or make it very obvious to the horse, and then build on that and start to challenge them from that. And cross country training for a 4-year-old horse through to a 5-star event horse is to still have that progression when you go out there, introducing the exercise or the question to the horse at no matter what age or what level, and make sure that they understand it and build off that, so the horse is never doubted the rider.
Welcome to Practical Horseman's podcast, featuring conversations with respected riders, industry leaders, and horse care experts. The show is co-hosted by Practical Horseman editors, and our goal is to inform, educate, and inspire. I'm Jocelyn Pierce, and this week's episode is with top eventer Ryan Wood. A native of Australia, Ryan started competing in eventing at 8 years old. He purchased his first horse, an Australian stock horse named Countdown, through a local newspaper for $1,500. Ryan and Countdown moved up through the levels of eventing together, completing their first CCI 5-star at Adelaide when they were both 19 years old. Ryan competed successfully throughout Australia, earning top earnings at the Melbourne CCI 4-star, Sydney CCI 4-star, and Warwick CIC 4-star. He trained with and worked for numerous top riders, including Australian eventer Guy Wallace and top champion show jumper Ludger Beerbaum. Ryan moved to the United States in 2008 and started working for Bruce Davidson before moving to Philip Dutton's True Prospect Farm in Unionville, Pennsylvania. He now runs his own business, Woodstock Eventing, out of True Prospect Farm. Since moving to the U.S., Ryan has become one of the top eventers in the country. In 2016, he won the Jersey Fresh CCI 4-star, the Vermont CCI 4-star, and the USEA Adequan Advanced Gold Cup final at the American Eventing Championships, where he also earned the Reserve Championship. In 2018, Ryan finished 8th at the Poe CCI 5-star and was named the reserve rider for the Australian eventing team at the World Equestrian Games. In addition to competing, Ryan also enjoys teaching and developing young horses. During our conversation, Ryan shares his overall training philosophy, how to introduce cross-country corners, what he looks for in an eventing prospect, how he deals with the lows of the sport, and more. But first, I want to thank this episode's sponsor, SmartPak. SmartPaks are a simple, foolproof way to make sure your horse always gets the right supplements. All you have to do is choose the supplements that your horse needs, and SmartPak will pack them in convenient, customized daily doses that make feeding time fast and easy. And SmartPaks aren't just easier for you, they're better for your horse too. Because they come in pre-measured doses, are clearly labeled, and sealed for freshness, there's never any doubt that your horse is getting the absolute best. SmartPaks are not only better for your horse, but also better for the environment. Unlike most buckets, SmartPaks are made from 100% recycled PET plastics and can be recycled again. Visit smartpak.com or call 1-800-461-8898 to learn more about how SmartPak can help you take great care of your horse today. Now, let's jump right into this episode as Ryan shares how he began riding.
Well, we grew up in a small town about an hour from Sydney City, and a small town called Annengrove, and everyone had a horse in their backyard. So we actually were a little deprived of a horse, and we had a donkey to start, a donkey named Penny, and then once we sort of outgrew the donkey, my parents went and bought a pony from the circus called Bucko, and so that was my first pony.
So were you and Bucko doing tricks or jumping?
Bucko used to throw in tricks, but they were not authorized by the rider, and so he used to jump a jump, and then he'd stop on the other side and put his head down and I'd fall off, and then we'd be lined up in a troop drill at the Pony Club, and he'd be standing on his hind legs, waving at the instructor, and so he was a cool little horse, but he had some characteristics that he brought from the circus that weren't ideal.
How did it kind of become more of a serious thing for you? I mean, did you always know that you wanted to make a career out of it?
No, like we did Pony Club, and then we did all the Pony Club stuff, mounted games, and then eventing and show jumping, and we had a lot of fun doing that and traveling around Australia, and we used to do a lot of show jumping shows and go to the country fairs, and that was it was just a little bit of a way of life it ended up being, and then eventually we got I got a horse called Countdown. He was an Australian stock horse that we bought out of the local paper, and he ended up being an incredible cross-country horse, and he took me through Pony Club and then to my first 5-star.
When did, I guess, you decide that you wanted to move your career to the US?
So equine influenza hit the Australian, hit Australia. It was a huge shock to everything that was equine related, and it shut down racing, show jumping, eventing, anything to do with equestrian. You weren't allowed to transport a horse, and there was huge fines and jail time if you were caught driving a horse around. Australia hadn't ever had a influenza issue, and so they've never had the horses weren't vaccinated, and then it came through on a shuttle stallion from Japan, and it just spread like wildflower, and it was nothing going on there. And I thought, well, if now's not the time, it'll never be the time. So we got on I sold everything that I owned, my car, horse truck, all my horses, a couple of saddles, and jumped on a plane and turned up at True Prospect Farm.
And did you know anybody there, or did you just decide I'm gonna go ahead and just make this leap?
Yeah, I'd actually, the year before, I had come over for a couple of months and based with Phil Dutton, and I had a horse that I brought over with me that I was aiming for Kentucky, and he actually sustained an injury in the preparation and didn't end up running. So he was, I left him over here when I went home, and sort of figuring, I sort of had it in the back of my mind that might be an option to move over here. But when the equine influenza hit, it was a sign that it was time to leave the motherland.
Did you notice any big differences between riding in Australia versus the US?
Oh yeah. It's very. Australia is awesome, but it's very simple, and the way that the events were run and the arenas were set up, and it'd all be very, very basic, but it was all practical and did the job. And then coming over here and like your little weekend horse trial over here is like what the 5-star looks like in Australia. So it was a big difference.
And can you talk a little bit about your overall training philosophy?
I think the main thing that I would be focused on with all the horses is progression, and to always start out easy or make it very obvious to the horse, and then build on that and start to challenge them from that. And cross country training for a 4-year-old horse through to a 5-star event horse is to still have that progression when you go out there, introducing the exercise or the question to the horse at no matter what age or what level, and make sure that they understand it and build off that, so the horse is never doubted the rider. And then when you go to an event and you're asking him to do something where he's jumping into an area where he can't see the landing, or he's jumping a narrow fence or off a blind turn, you've never doubted him before or put him in a situation where he hasn't been able to do it, and so he never questions you, and he'll always perform. So that's the way I think about things, to always never be chancy, and never, when you train, never take a risk, and be very methodical and spell it out to the horse, so he's very understanding and confident in what you're asking him to do, and then he'll never question you when you're out on course.
And speaking about your training philosophy and how you kind of like to build a progression, it's a nice segue to your article that you did with us back in 2017, where you shared how you like to kind of build a progression when introducing horses to cross-country corners. And the first step you talked about in the article was kind of developing the correct canter to jump corners. Could you kind of describe what the right canter should be, what it feels like, how you achieve that?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's might be a little bit hard for me to voice. It's more of a feel, but I'll try. So it's obviously different to galloping down to a brush fence or a triple bar in the show jumping. You're going to be a little bit more balanced. It's an accuracy fence, so the chances of a run out are greater than what they are on a straight table. So it might have the same width element and height, but you've got an angle element to account for. So you need to set up a little bit more than what you would for a gallop fence, and just give the horse a moment to read it. And then so it'll just be slightly more balanced, and take a moment in the approach, so the horse has time to read the question, and a little bit more collected in your gallop than what it would be for just taking on a regular sort of table. And depending on how the corner was placed, often they'll place them as a B element from either a drop or on a turn or out of water. So depending on what's happening before can also play into effect on how you get to the corner. But yeah, basically whatever it is, if it's a corner out in the middle of the field, or if it's in a combination, you just want to be able to have your gallop or your canter a little bit more contained, so you give the horse that extra moment to read the question, and then the rider to be confident in where they are, and support them on the last couple of strides so that they read the question and jump through and land and gallop away to the next fence.
And then the second step in the article you had riders doing is practicing a simulated corner in the arena with show jumps before going out and just jumping a cross-country corner in a cross-country field. Can you just kind of walk me through, why you do that and kind of how you set up that exercise, how you ride that exercise?
Yeah, so that it's a good introduction to break it down as much as for the horse, but also for the rider as well. Sometimes it can be a bit daunting for a rider to go out and jump a solid cross-country corner, and if they've done it in the ring, with a barrel and some rails, they're gonna feel better about doing it over a solid corner out in the cross country. And you can make it really basic. Put the barrel on the side even, and put the front rail down and have it angled so it's a soft sort of ascending front rail, and get the rider and the horse to jump through that, and then build it up so then the rails are square, and then even go next step to have it so that the barrel is standing up, and depending on the level, obviously, and that sort of stems from Australia, I think, because we didn't have a lot of schooling places, so we would make a lot of the cross country jumps out of what we had, and that would be these 44-gallon drums that we would pick up from a factory, and we'd use them. We'd jump them on their own as skinny fences, and then we'd use them as show jumps as well. We'd put 2 or 4 of them together to make a vertical or an oxer, and then play around with them to make corners as well. So I think it's a good way to get the idea and get the horse and the rider confident in jumping a corner built out of rails and barrels, and then once they feel good over that, then they can go and tackle it out in the cross-country field over a solid corner.
And you mentioned earlier that riders, you'll notice more runouts with corners. Are there any other common kind of issues you notice riders struggling with corners, and how do you troubleshoot those?
I remember jumping, I was at a pony, I think it was a pony club clinic in Australia. It was in the south of New South Wales at a farm called Mirrabooka, and they ran an event there, and I was having a cross-country lesson with Australian great event rider Shane Rose, and he was teaching us how to jump a corner, and basically you want to aim for, so there's a narrow part of the corner that you're going to chance having a glance off, and then there's going to be a wide part of the corner which is going to be asking too much of an effort for the horse to clear. So you want to pick somewhere in between the widest part of the corner that you would feel comfortable jumping and the narrowest part of the corner which you would feel comfortable jumping, and aim for that so you've got a little margin of error left or right. And then you're going to bisect the angle. So sometimes you don't get the chance to bisect the angle because the course designer has designed it in such a way that you've got the A element holds you on a certain line. But if you don't have that A element, you want to bisect the angle and then jump the bisected corner at a right angle to that, if that makes sense. And I remember Shane Rose telling me I was probably 11 years old, and it stuck with me till now.
You're also known for being an incredibly strong and consistent cross-country rider. At the national level in 2019, out of 199 rounds, you jumped 198 clear. And the year before, you jumped all 114 rounds clear with 97 of those inside the time, which is incredibly remarkable. What is it about your riding or your program that you think has led to such consistent results?
I think that it's a little it's pretty awesome to have that stat said. I hadn't I didn't realize that until EquiRatings posted it, and I think that I go out on cross country course on every horse that I ride with the expectation that there is no doubt in my mind that we're coming home clear. I feel that the preparation to get to the event is very important, and what I touched on before about having progression in not only obviously the way to move up the levels, but to school any horse at any level every time you school, and to make them so confident and believe in you that when you leave the start box, there's no doubt in the horse's mind, and there's no doubt in the rider's mind, and that's the way I think about it.
And when you're competing, do you have a routine?
A routine is like my warm up, or
either if you have a specific warm up that you do, or if you have a way you like to get ready, whether that's kind of taking quiet time or watching rounds or anything of that that you think prepares you.
Not really. I think that up until like a 4 or 5 star, it would be pretty stock standard to get on and warm up as normal. At a 4 or 5 star, I would take a little bit more time to break the course down and really have it clear in my mind, and try to, if possible, to watch a couple of horses go through some combinations and get a feel of how the horses are reading the questions and making a judgment from there. But apart from that, like my standard horse trial, the homework would be done the week before, and we'd be at the show ready to rumble.
And do you get nervous at all?
I would. I do at advanced, but levels. Well, it depends on what I'm riding, actually. Yeah. Typically, the lower levels, it's just it feels like it's just another a training ride, like as if I was getting on at home at the show. But yeah, there has been some horses that have made me nervous at the lower levels. But typically it's more at the advanced. I think I'd get nervous there, but in a good way, that it was make me think that I was not taking anything for granted, and being very serious and focused on what was about to come.
And you've certainly had a lot of competitive successes. Are there any successes or wins or just competitions in general that you were really happy with the result and it's kind of stuck with you?
For sure. I think that taking Woodstock Bennett to his first 5-star in France, we came 8th at Pau, and that was a huge moment for me and his owners, and it was great to be able to share it with Curran Simpson, who has been an owner of Bennett since he was 4 years old. So it was a really special event, and then another standout was I can't remember what year. I think it might have been 2016. We were at Bromont, and Frankie won the now 4-star short, and Bennett won the 4-star long at the same weekend. That was pretty awesome. And then going back from there, finishing my first Kentucky on Fernhill Classic, and that was a pretty awesome moment too. They're the standouts.
You just mentioned obviously some very important, influential horses. Could you tell me a little bit more about them, about the horses in your life who have kind of stood out to you and what they're like personality-wise, what they're like to ride?
Yeah, they're those 3 that we just mentioned. They're all very, very different, but they're all very talented in their own ways. I think that the biggest thing is they had obviously one, they had the ability, but more so they had the desire. And I think that you can get caught up in the way if a horse moves phenomenal or it jumps incredible, it doesn't mean that it's going to be a world beater. And these horses were solid movers and jumpers, but they weren't freaks. And I had them all from 4-year-olds, and so they were all in the program and until they got to that top level, and they all came to work every day and wanted to do it. So yeah, it's the similarity is that having a horse that is willing, rather than having the big fancy mover or the big flashy jumper. They don't always have that willing nature for the cross country, and that's, I think, a big component. What I'm looking at horses now is more that they have the desire and the mind and the trainability, and then comes the movement and the carefulness on after that. But it's I think it's important to start with a horse that actually wants to work and wants to do the job.
And when you're looking at horses, how do you is it kind of a matter of riding a lot of different horses and figuring out which ones kind of have that skill set or like have that desire? How do you kind of approach picking horses?
That's a good question. It's something that I'm always discussing with my peers and my mentors, and I'm still trying to figure that out. But I think that if you tell yourself, okay, I'm gonna go on a horse shopping trip, and don't feel that you have to come home with a horse. So whether it's in America or it's overseas, if you've got to talk yourself into it, it's not the right one. And that's you got to be really honest with yourself. And if you've got to watch the video multiple times to be happy with what you are purchasing, it's probably not the right one. I think that you've got to ride it and get off it and say, this is the one. And that's I think it's obviously it's a rare thing to do, and I've been on shopping trips and come home with the right horses, and I've come home with the wrong horses, and I've come home without horses. So it's still something that it's not foolproof, but I think that's a good gauge to keep with you, is to be honest with yourself. And if you've got to talk yourself into it, it's probably not the right one.
And this is obviously a sport that has a lot of highs, but it also has a lot of lows. How do you kind of keep things in check or deal with things when they're not quite going your way?
That's a great question. And I think that it's probably an important one for people to hear and people to talk about, because there's probably more lows than highs in general, and there'll be streaks where you are winning everything, and then there'll be streaks when you can't get anything to go your way. And I think it's important to have the right people around you, and they've been through the highs and the lows, so they know exactly what you're going through, and then you can be there for them, and to just keep on pushing as well, and don't dwell on it, and to find something positive to work towards. And whether it's nice young horses are coming through, or you go and find a new horse to bring along, or whatever it is, if you go start focusing on another aspect of your riding and say, okay, I've got this downtime because my top horse he's got to have 6 months off, but I can still ride dressage, and I'm going to make this 6 months count. So when I'm back eventing, I'm going to be that much more competitive after dressage, and I'm going to find ways like that.
What do you think is your favorite part about the sport, or just riding, or getting to work with horses every day in general?
It's a fantastic life that we live. We're outside. We're doing what we love to do. We get to see some incredible places. We travel the world, doing competitions. I think that what makes the highs so high is the time, the effort, the struggle, the setbacks, and the knockdowns that you've had to then get that win or get that top 10 at a 5-star. It makes it that much, you appreciate it that much more, and then you can celebrate your friends that get there because you've seen what they've gone through to get there. I think that it's such a long road to get there, and it's such an awesome feat for someone to do it, that it's an awesome feeling when it goes well at the top.
It certainly seems like community is definitely a big part of eventing, maybe even more so than other sports. Do you feel like that's true?
For sure, for sure. I think there's a factor that it is like it's any sport, whether it's equestrian or cycling or football, whatever, to be at the top, it's a lot of hard work and years of training. I think that the thing that is different about eventing is that the risk factor is much greater, and I think that everyone wants their competitors to come home safely, and I think that's what brings the eventing community close.
And just one last question. Do you have any hobbies out of the saddle, or what do you enjoy doing when you're not riding?
Not really. I don't really have time. I probably should make time, but I'm so absorbed in eventing and horses and searching for the next superstar that consumes me. But if I could say something, I actually did have a hit of tennis yesterday with a fellow Australian, Sally Lofting, and that was a breath of fresh air, and it was something that I thought I should make an effort to do something like this once a week, and it was a lot of fun. So maybe I'll take up tennis once a week.
So watch for Ryan at Wimbledon in a couple of years.
Far from that. Yeah, it's just good to do something different.
Great. Well, thanks so much for chatting with me, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good talking to you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode, and thanks again to this episode's sponsor, SmartPak. Join us again for upcoming conversations with the legendary show jumper Katie Monahan-Prudent, hunter trainer and rescue founder Ron Danta, and eventer Courtney Cooper. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, please rate and review the show. I'm Jocelyn Pierce, and you've been listening to the Practical Horseman podcast.